Good evening, everyone. Roots Biotech Private Limited welcomes you all. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Taking out valuable time from your busy schedule. Roots Biotech is one of the leading provider of innovative solutions to various problems faced in the field by veterinarians. Today we are presenting Management of Pain and Inflammation in Large Animals by Dr. Dayaram Suryavanshi, Director, Omega Laboratories. I wish to request you all to keep your microphones on mute. And if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box. Also, we will have time for questions at the end. Dr. Dayaram Suryavanshi, today's speaker, has had an illustrious career with a varied experience. After completing MVSc Pathology from Bombay Veterinary College, he was associated with Bombay Veterinary College as a professor for 8 years. He has also taken a doctorate in veterinary pharmacovigilance. Dr. Dayaram Suryavanshi has a vast experience of 22 years. Sir has carried out more than 2.5 lakh blood sample examination and more than 13,500 diagnostic post-mortem examination. Without wasting any more time, I request Dr. Dayaram Suryavanshi to take over. Please bear with us as I share the screen to Sir.
Hello, good evening, friends. Today we are discussing management of pain and inflammation in large animals. So everybody knows the things that we are doing. We have research collaboration and technical support to many national and international pharmaceutical companies. Then we have carried out more than 36 clinical trials and efficacy trials of different veterinary products. Did more than 2.5 lakhs blood sample examination and 13,500 postmortems in different animals. So without wasting time, we will go forward for the today's topic. So pain and inflammation. Now what is pain? The pain is a sense of pain is of practical significance in veterinary medicine because uh, in our day-to-day life of the veterinary practice, the most of the cases are related to this pain and inflammation. So every case is having pain, every case is having inflammation, and very few cases are there. They are devoid of this pain and inflammation. So its management, its prevention, it includes the our regular practice and regular fundamental parts of our treatment. In order to recognize, assess, prevent, and treat the pain, we must understand its pathway and pathophysiology and its mechanism of the pain in different animals and how the pain takes place and how to treat the pain. Now, the definition of pain, its classification, description, pathophysiology, then neurotransmission, evaluation of the pain as well as the physiological response to pain with special reference to domestic animals, then understanding of pathophysiology mechanism of the pain and physiological response of the animal to pain, it may be add its efficient management. So once we understood the pain, it's very simple to treat the pain. Now according to the IASP, that is the International Association for Study of the Pain, they're saying that the pain is unpleasant sensory and emotional experience associated with actual or potential tissue damage or described in terms of tissue damage. So the pain is nothing but the unpleasant sensory emotional experience associated with actual or potential tissue damage or described in terms of such damage. So day to day, our practice, we are uh, going through this and we are experiencing the pain in the animals. Now, pain control for the routine management procedure is considered as a one of the most important welfare priorities in our livestock production today. Now pain goes via cerebral cortex, thalamus, limbic system. All these systems are involved in the pain management and the response and the behavior which can be observed because of the pain stimulus. The pain stimulus is depending upon the species of animal, breed, then temperament and rearing type of the animal. So what kind of the breed is there, what kind of the species are there, what kind of the temperament of the animal is there. All these things matter for the expression of the pain in the animals. Now say for example, these are the some free-range but desi animals. They are extremely stimulus to the any kind of stimulus. So they are very frightened animals. They can run anywhere. They can run, or their response to the any external stimulus is quite difficult. So such animals are suffering from the conditions like the muscular pain. So then the most of them are suffering from the fractures because they are very unstable animals. So these things can be happen with the type of animals which are involved in this. Now, if you see the cycle of pain, so here the skin and muscle, whenever there is a pain to the skin, muscles or bone, the stimulus will go to the nerve. We can say the peripheral nerves. The stimulus will go to the peripheral nerves. From peripheral nerves, the stimulus go to the spinal cord, and from the spinal cord, it will reach to the brain. Then from brain, the action will be takes place. So like we have been taught that whenever there is a action, there is a reaction. In the same fashion, whenever there is any kind of pain or the stimulus is there to the skin, muscle, bone, or any tissue of the body, that will reach to the periphery. From periphery, it will go to the spinal cord. From spinal cord, it will go to the brain and thalamus. It get processed, and from process, it will again come back to the same tissue, and that particular portion of the body will respond to that particular stimulus. Now, as we going towards the animals, we are observing animal very carefully. So looking towards the face of animal, we may say that this animal is having some pain in body. So there is a change in the look of animal. The normal freshness of that animal is lost. The eyesight, or they may be staring at some place. So such things can be happen whenever there is a pain is there in the animal. The animal are anorectic or maybe taking less feed, and overall the face expression of that particular animal, those are having the pain, is been changed. Now classification of pain. Now traditionally pain is classified into two parts, that is a acute one and chronic one. So acute pain and chronic pain. Then another classification will say that the pain may be the adaptive or it may be the maladaptive. The adaptive pain is normal response to the tissue damage. Whenever there is a tissue damage, the body say that the pain is there, and the adaptive pain will be get lost or get removed once the tissue damage is get complete, or once the healing is over, the adaptive pain is also over. Then adaptive pain includes the inflammatory pain, which measure competent of the many pain status. Now the maladaptive pain. So this is very quite different kind of pain. The peripheral nervous system or the central nervous system is get damaged and did not respond to healing process. Though the healing process is takes place at the tissue level, but that particular portion of the body will not respond. More catabolic activity can start in that particular portion of the body. For example, the atrophy or complete disability is there. Say for example, if there is a complete rupture of any major nerves to the of the particular limb or the hind leg or the foreleg, if there is complete damage or the complete dislocation and complete damage to that nerve, that particular portion of the body undergo the atrophy. So that is the maladaptive type of response can be observed because of the pain. So earlier the nerve get cut, maybe by accident or maybe the mechanical injury, and in response to that there are chances of the development of maladaptive process and or the maladaptive pain, and such type of pains will not be recovered though the healing process is going on, but the response from that particular organ will not be developed, and such things are called as a maladaptive pains. Now acute pain disappears once the damaged tissue get healed. So it's a natural rule that acute pain get disappears, and once the healing process completed, acute pain disappears. Now, sometimes the acute pain will be converted into the chronic pain. Say, for example, acute mastitis may converted into the chronic mastitis or fibrosis. Then the acute joint pain may be converted into the chronic joint pain, or it may be remain as a persistent. So the chronic or persistent pain lasts beyond the expected healing time. So such type of process of the pathology will be required more and more time for the healing, and till there is no complete healing, the pain will be there in that particular organ. Say, for example, in fibrosis of mastitis, in case of mastitis, then ankylosis or the severe joint pains, and that may convert into the chronic arthritis, chronic laminitis. In all these conditions, the chronic and persistent pain can be there. The chronic pain can be more difficult to recognize because there is not possible to identify behavior that would uniquely or reliably indicate its existence. But at field conditions, those things are present, like the chronic laminitis. Animal can walk very good for sometimes and will stay for sometimes. So we are not able to express, or the animal is not able to express, and we are not able to diagnose such chronic type of inflammation. Looking towards the other parameters like feeding is normal, everything is normal, but if we touch to the mammary gland of that particular animal, we will find there is a fibrosis, there is a very hardening of the mammary gland is there. So that's why by looking towards the clinical signs, we are not able to find unless we touch, or unless we go for some special type of examinations. It is also important to realize that the various tissues and organs of the body have different sensitivity to the pain stimulus. For example, the parenchymatous organs are quite less painful than the mucous membranes. Say, for example, something is went into the eyes, the animal is suddenly start doing the head shaking, the rubbing of the eyes. In the same fashion, whenever anything is in the oral cavity, vaginal mucosa, so definitely the quite irritation is there. Means the mucous membranes, cornea, dental pulps, they are more sensitive than the internal organs like the liver, spleen. So they are quite less painful than the superficial organ, we can say. Then again, there are two types of the pain. So besides the acute pain and chronic pain, the nociceptive pain and neuropathic pain. Then nociceptive pain is the perception of the pain sensation, and it's generated by injury that activate nociceptors, like the chemical receptors. They are formed in the peripheral tissues. Then these systems can be changed in the chronic inflammation. So the receptors or the inflammatory mediators of the nervous systems are different in the chronic one. Then the neuropathic pain is the pathology of the somatosensory system, either in the peripheral nervous system or the central nervous system. So this is another classification. Then nociceptive pain, again divided into the somatic and visceral. So after all, looking towards the animals, we are not able to say that this is a nociceptive or like that. But as it is a classification, we should go through that. Then the somatic and visceral pain. Somatic body pain has been described as a localized, sharp, aching, and severe pain. Originate from the skin and connective tissue, including muscle, joint, and bones. Then somatic pain originating in the skin is called as a superficial pain. So generally, the cut, abrasions, opening abscess, the superficial wounds, all these come under the superficial type of pain. Then deep pain, whenever there is involvement of deeper connective tissue, muscles, bone, and joint. So that is the deep type of somatic pain. Then visceral pain, generally the visceral organs are involved. So maybe the lung, liver, heart, kidney, gastrointestinal tract, uterus, bladder. So all visceral organs will become under the visceral type of pain. And generally the response as compared to the skin or the superficial is quite dull in the visceral type of pain. Then painful states are caused particularly by tissue or nerves damage, inflammatory process, then the viral infections, demyelination, and are characterized by the pain hypersensitivity. So whenever there is a pain to the particular parts of body, the inflammatory process takes place, maybe because of the viral infections, maybe because of the demyelination, and are characterized by the pain hypersensitivity. Now chemicals, there are different release of the chemicals. Neurochemistry will say that there is a release of large number of different types of chemicals during the inflammatory process. So that includes the endorphins, neurokines, then prostaglandins, biogenic amines, gamma aminobutyric acid, GABA, then neurostatin, purines or the purines derivatives can be released. Then COX-1, COX-2, that they can generate during the inflammation at the tissue level or cellular level. Then there is a release of different cytokinins, interleukins, and collectively the chemical mediators of inflammations are responsible for the increasing hypersensitivity to the stimulus or the any kind of inflammation. So these are the chemicals that can be present in the pathophysiology of the pain. Now, from here, we will see different pathological conditions at the field levels, and day to day, we are coming across these kind of problems, and we have to treat such animals having the very acute pain, chronic pain, and different kinds of pains. Now, the superficial tissues and appendages. So, generally, the superficial tissue includes skin, then appendages. So, mastitis, skin, abrasion, cuts, puncture wound, viral infections like FMD, then the pox, then the papillomatosis, sometimes maggoted wounds, abscess, pustule formations. So all these things will become under the skin infections and the skin inflammation. Then appendages of the horns, the dehorning injuries or the surgical wounds we are preparing during the dehorning or the dehorning by the chemical methods. So all this will produce the pain after the surgical intervention or the chemical applying or the hot plate applying. Then the docking. So docking, generally whenever there is some ischemic areas, ischemic necrosis of the tail or the tail gangrene is there or dry gangrene is there. In such conditions, we may go for the tail docking, or if there is a compound fracture of the vertebrae of the tail, then we have to go for the docking. So the again inflammation is there by the process of the docking. Then hoop trimming, sometimes if the animal is not restrained properly, the hoop trimming may lead to the some injury to the hoops and sensitive lamella. Then musculoskeletal system, so having the fractures, mechanical, muscular injury, dislocations, arthritis, generally the chronic inflammation, arthritis, chronic inflammation, then laminitis, lameness, ligament problems. So these are the common problems that we are facing day-to-day life in our veterinary practice. Then surgical wounds, maybe cesarean section, maybe rheumatommy, laparotomy, diaphragmatic hernia, different types of hernia, thoracotomy, correction of fractures. So all these come under the surgical wounds, and this for that surgical wound, there is a requirement of the healing process. Then colic, gas colic is there, displacement colic is there, obstructive colic is there, spasmodic colic is there, foreign body colic, the crystal colics, renal colics, hepatic colics. So these type of different colics are there. So such kind of problems we are facing in the field. So one by one we will see its management as we go further. Now the specific inflammation and the pain of visceral organs. So the organ and its inflammation. So hepatitis, mastitis, nephritis, cystitis, urolithiasis, enteritis, rheumatitis, abomascitis, pneumonia, pleurisy, conjunctivitis, stomatitis, sharp tooth or the sharp teeth. So all these are the conditions we are observing, and we are giving special names to that conditions. The stomatitis, conjunctivitis, pneumonia or pleurisy, rheumatitis, enteritis, nephritis, mastitis, and hepatitis. Now, when we go to the particular animals for the treatment, so this is general guideline or general idea about the management of pain. So generally in our day-to-day practice, we are following this type of treatments. So by using physical agents, hot fermentation, cold fermentation, then use of some lights, say for example, infrared red light, then waves, sonic waves, acupunctures, then surgical intervention. So physical agents which can relieve the pain, that includes the physical agents, hot fomentation, cold fomentation, use of light, infrared lights, then waves, sonic waves, acupunctures, then the surgical interventions, like that all these come under the general management of the pain with the help of physical agents. That, then chemical agents or drugs. So generally we can use the sedatives, local or general, or the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Sometimes we have to use the steroids. Sometimes we have to use the local irritant or local applications of the liniments, ointments. So chemical agents includes sedatives, then local general anesthetics, NSAIDs, the steroids, irritants, local applications, liniments and ointments. Then if we find the specific treatment or the specific conditions, then we go for the specific treatment, the specific supportive treatment and corrective management aspects. So all these come under the control of the treatments of the pain. So whatever the pains are there, we try to reduce the pain by using the different types of physical agents, the hot fomentation, cold fomentation, light, infrared, then the waves, sonic waves, then sometimes acupunctures, the surgical interventions, then chemicals, maybe sedative, then the local or general anesthetics, then non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, sometimes steroids, then the use of, we are using the local irritant, local applications by ointment and liniments, then specific treatment for specific conditions, say for example, enteritis. So we can give specific treatments for the enteritis, including antibiotics and the antidiarrheal substances, then specific supportive treatment, corrective management. So here I can give example of some of the oxalates things and a large amount of the silicates that can be present in the feed. So that may lead to the chronic or the crystal type of colic in the animals, the cattle also, and maximum times it is observed in case of the horses. Now we'll take every conditions and its management, the complications of mastitis and its management. So acute mastitis. So everybody knows that whenever there is acute mastitis, there is a severe swelling, then pain, redness, cyanosis, hotness, the complete change in the physicochemical properties of the milk. So the color of milk will be changed, the color, then the consistency of milk will be changed. Once we touch the udder, there is a hotness, there is a swelling, and animal is generally not allowing us to strip this some of the quantity of the milk. So that is the typical test of the acute mastitis, or the typical feature of the acute mastitis. There is swelling, pain, redness, cyanosis, hotness, complete change in the physicochemical properties of the milk. And many times if the pain is unbearable, or if animal is not able to bear the pain, most of the times animal may sit down. So the cases which are suffering from the acute mastitis and animals set down, in that conditions there is a severe septicemia, toxemia can be developed, and because of the severe septicemia and toxemia, there may be the development of subnormal body temperature due to the extreme toxemia. Now sometimes it may happen that accidentally we are treating such cases by giving the calcium salines. So intravenous calcium we are giving. So generally animals may have the history of delivery, then animals set down. So surprisingly or unknowingly, we may confuse that animal may set down as we are taking the per rectal temperature, and if the temperature is 96 or 97 Fahrenheit, then we are giving immediately the calcium saline. And such conditions, if remain undiagnosed, in such conditions, the complications can be developed and fatality result, or the fatality may be result, and such type of things may happen sometimes. So this type of downers type of, or the sitting down mechanism can be observed because of the severe pain into the udder. And generally the gangrenous type of mastitis will show this kind of alterations in the animals. So gangrenous dermatitis will be having the very typical type of appearance of the udder. The cyanosis will be there. So here I use specific term, the redness oblique cyanosis. So in such animals, the cyanosis is there. There is a bluish discoloration of the udder, and if you see the color of the milk, it is little bit reddish or blackish in color. So such type of things can be observed because of the gangrenous mastitis. And in such conditions, animal may sit down, and accidentally or the coincidentally we can treat such animals by the calcium, and again the metastatic calcification may observe, and such type of things may lead to the death of the animal. So we must be some careful about the downer type of conditions. We must see udder first. If the udder is having severe swelling, there is change in physicochemical properties, then we go for the treatment of the mastitis, not treatment of the calcium, or not treatment of the calcium deficiency. Now, general treatment for mastitis. So generally we are using the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, then the cold fermentation. Now, the cold fermentation is advisable during the acute severe inflamed type of mastitis. Whenever cold fermentation is advisable whenever there is a severe pain and hotness to the particular organ. So here in case of mastitis, if the swelling is more, the vasodilatation is more exudation is there. So in such condition, we can apply the cold fermentation, whereas hot fermentation can be given in the chronic type of inflammation. So in acute inflammation, we should go for the cold fermentation. So it will minimize the vasodilatation, minimize the entry of the internal blood into the circulation. It will stop the pain sensation for some time. Then specific antibiotics, we are using the specific antibiotics for the gangrenous mastitis, then the E. coli mastitis, staphylococcus, streptococcus. All these different type of antibiotics can be used for the treating the different kinds of mastitis. For the gangrenous type of mastitis, we may go for the streptopenicillin and metronidazole to control the anaerobic conditions of the anaerobic infection of the udder. Then removal of infections as far as possible by stripping. So if we are stripping the milk continuously, we are removing removing the concentration of the bacteria from the udder. So that is another good therapy for the removal of the internal infection from the udder. Then fluid therapy. If the toxic mastitis is there, we can go for the extensive fluid therapy. Extensive fluid therapy, which can minimize the action of the toxins. Then trisodium citrate, it can maintain the pH, and the physicochemical properties of the milk can be restored. Then vitamin E and selenium. The vitamin E and selenium should be there because in any type of inflammation, there is a release of large number of ROS, or the reactive oxygen species, can be produced within the udder, and that will initiate acute inflammatory reaction. To minimize that, we should provide some vitamin E and selenium. Then after stripping, we can give some intramammary infusions. As per your experience, you can use the intramammary infusions, but it is needed for to combat the local infection into the udder. Now, this is example of the brown blackish type of milk that is observed during the milk. So this type of cases are suspected for the gangrenous mastitis, and along with that, you should correlate this cyanosis. Then sometimes there is a crepitating sound is there. So the air bubbles are trapped into the canal of the milk or the milk cistern, and once we feel that, so we are feeling some gas bubbles inside the udder. So these are some of the characteristic feature of the gangrenous mastitis. So the gangrenous mastitis will have cyanosis, then the hotness is there, the complete change in physicochemical properties, animal may set down, toxemia may be developed, and these are some of the things can be observed in the acute type of mastitis. And we are treating acute type of mastitis by giving the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, then cold fermentations, then use of some specific antibiotics. I am giving here example of this streptopenicillins. Then as far as possible, we should remove the milk which is infected by the stripping. Then we can use the excess of fluid therapy to minimize the toxin levels or the toxins which are circulate into the blood. Then we are using trisodium citrate, vitamin E, and selenium to minimize the physicochemical properties, physicochemical properties. Vitamin E and selenium will minimize the inflammatory reaction and prevent the release of large numbers of the reactive oxygen species. Then in intramammary infusions we can use for the control of the mastitis or the treat the mastitis. Now, after mastitis, we can see the general management of the wound, because wound is also the one another type of features which can lead to the pain into the animal. So generally, wounds can be first it can be clean with the help of the potassium permanganate or the whatever the antiseptic solutions you have with you, maybe the betadine, maybe the anything that we have with our bag in our bag. Then application of antiseptics. So after cleaning and washing, we can use the antiseptics. Then we can use the local anesthetic if the animal is not able to cooperate or not able to remain stand for the cleaning and the everything. So we can use the local anesthesia for the giving some sutures to that particular wound. Then we have to remove the foreign bodies, foreign materials which may be present in that wound. If the maggoted wounds are there, we can have to do the manual work into the deeper portion of that particular portion. So in that case, it's better to give the local or the local sedation or sedation or the local anesthesia for the better wound management. Then the hemostatic agents, if the bleeding is there, if wound is little bit more in dimensions, then we can use the hemostatics to control the bleeding. Then removal of pyogenic membranes if the abscess are there. So if we are treating the abscess, we must remove the pyogenic membranes. So unless we are not removing the pyogenic membranes and not refreshing the wound will not be healed. It will be continuously oozing and the spoiling the other tissues and the environment of that particular animal. Then the large number of flies can come over there. The mites will be there, and maggots will be there, and overall the farms. The health of farm may be disturbed. Then sometimes we may go for the cauterization with the with the hot plate or the hot iron. Then sometimes the LN2 or the liquid nitrogen. Then sometimes we can go for the potassium permanganate crystal. So depending upon the requirement, we can go for the management of the wounds. So hot fermentation, maybe the use of liquid nitrogen. Then sometimes we are using the crystals of potassium permanganate for the cauterization at the tissue level. Now abscess is there. Now if we see, this is a big abscess at the neck region here. So this is the the reddish yellow material is the pyogenic membranes. I am removing that pyogenic membrane from the particular that abscess. Then it's one of the case of the elephant having the multiple abscess at the various parts of body. So for remedy for the wound is so it's prone, and many people are using this. So Rumec DP. So it's one of the fantastic product from the Roots Biotic. So it will take care of the as a fly repellent. Then the antiseptics and the wound healing because the zinc is also there. Okay, so these are some of the indications. So after cleaning and everything, we can go for the applying the Rumec DP powder. So it is one of the better solution for the abscess and the wounds. Okay, then during the management of wounds, we should go for the regular dressing, use of the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Then we are using some long-acting antibiotics and the fly repellents and the antiseptic powder. So Rumec DP is one of the solution for the local application for the wounds, maybe the maggoted wounds, maybe the superficial wounds, or you can use even in the surgical wounds. At the for the follow-up therapy, we can use the this dusting powder. So it will repel the flies, and your major problems of the dressing of the wounds will be solved by this Rumec DP. Now this is about the wound management. Now the lameness and its management. Now lameness, the first thing is that we must identify the cause of lameness. So most of the times, and in the dairy farms, the SARA is one of the major farm or the major etiological agent. Then interdigital pathology. So it is also one of the common things. So in big farms, at least 5 to 10% of animals is having the interdigital problems, maybe the interdigital condyloma, maybe the interdigital abscesses, then bone and joint deformities, then there are sometimes subluxation of ligaments, then injury to the synovial membranes, injury to the muscles and ligaments, deficiency of minerals, then the infections of the joints, infections of the bones, then specific and symptomatic treatment. Generally, we are following, say, for example, SARA is there, the interdigital condyloma is there, the bone deformities are there, the fractures are there. So, in all these conditions, we should go for some specific treatments and as well as the symptomatic treatment. Now, this is the interdigital condylomas. So, as we talk about the interdigital condyloma, so in such type of things, so beyond the all these your routine type of treatment, so if we go for the LN2 cauterization, that is a liquid nitrogen cauterization, you can remove that particular debris and followed by the different supplements of the zinc, then non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. The zinc will be there, then the vitamin AD3, which is required for the healing, then the long-acting antibiotics, or the you can go for the daily antibiotic therapies. There is no issue. So these type of problems can be observed in some farms. These problems can be observed during the rainy season. In some farms, these problems can be observed in the winter season. So depending upon the intensity, depending upon the flies which are present in that particular area, then the nutritional status. So all these matters for the interdigital condyloma. So at the particular portion of the year, it may regress and it may again relapse. Such things can be observed in some of the farms at the periodically in a different seasons. Now, chronic wounds at the digital chronic wounds. If you can see these animals having the all four legs are affected by the. If you see, all four legs are having the inflammation. The left one is a little bit quite severely inflamed, but all three are having the similar kind of inflammation. Now, after that, the arthritis and mastitis, chronic arthritis, chronic mastitis, or basically we can say the fibrosis. Now, in case of chronic type of inflammation, we can go for the hot fermentation. Hot fermentation, generally I use this kind of therapy, which is found to be suitable for the control of the chronic fibrosis. In any kind of fibrosis, we can treat with this, the mud therapy, with the help of cotton soil, black cotton soil, or the ant nest soil. Then magnesium sulfate, potash, or the application of the hot magnesium sulfate over this particular area. Then use of liniments, then the use of potassium iodide, use of vitamin E and selenium, then use of some specific antibiotics which can penetrate into the deeper portion of that fibrous tissue. Then mineral supplementation. So all these things will require for the treating the mastitis and arthritis of the chronic nature, maybe the suffering from the fibrosis, arthritis, the chronic arthritis, chronic mastitis. So here the hot fermentation with the help of mud therapy, or you can use the hot bag also, no problem. Hot bag, the hot bricks can be used for the. So the basic reason behind this is that we are going to increase the blood flow into the particular area. Once there is an increase in a blood flow into the chronic inflammatory areas, so they can try to remove the debris of the fibrous tissue. More blood supply will be there, and we are initiating some little bit acute type of inflammation, and we are going to enhance the inflammatory procedure and enhance the healing procedure by giving the hot fermentation. So mud therapy. So I will give some of the picture of that. Then the magnesium sulfate. So in the same fashion, we can use liniments, potassium iodide, vitamin E, selenium. Now, what is the role of potassium iodide in a chronic or the fibrosis type of pain or the arthritis or fibrosis? So potassium iodide acts as a little bit fibrinolytic type of reaction, or the fibrinolytic type of action is there. and because of that, whatever the fibrous material is there, fibrous tissues are formed. They are tried, the potassium iodide by oral route try to reduce the fibrous tissues which are developed within the cell, or the within the connective tissues, within the joints, within the uh, mammary gland. So everywhere, once we are using the potassium iodide, definitely it lead to the decrease in the fibrosis by lysing the fibrin or the fibrous tissues. Now here I give the some of the mud therapy. So here you can see the ants, or the nest of ants. Different nest of the ants are there. If we dig this nest, so at the base of nest we are getting such type of the solid material, or the solid type of things. So this material we have to use, we have to crush it, we have to boil it, or the like we have to make paste, hot paste of it, and we have to apply that hot paste over the surface of udder in morning and evening. So we are during the milking we have to remove that all mud, and after milking we have to again apply that mud. So hot mud. So definitely it will be beneficial. It will give the hot fermentation and the enhance the healing procedure. If we are not getting all these three, so we can go directly for the black cotton soil. Whether the soil is there in the farmer's house or the near the farmer's house, we can go for the uh, mud therapy into the particular chronic inflammatory conditions. Now colic. Now colic is another chapter. Another inflammation can be observed. Another inflammation can be observed in the animals. Identification of specific condition by careful examination. Either we can go for the per rectal examination, we can go for the auscultation, clinical signs. So in such conditions, we can use the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, the spasmodic drugs, and antispasmodic drugs. The dicyclomine, heavy fluids can be given. Say for example, in case of the early phase of the intussusception, if we are giving heavy fluids, ultimately there are chances of the relief of that intussusception. Then use of some specific antibiotics, use of laxatives, use of purgatives. In case of the impaction cases, then correction of feeds. So just we have talked about the crystal formation by the silicates and oxalates. So there is an increase in the volume of the intestines, and once there is a volume of increase in volume, as well as the oxalates and silicates are heavy in nature, they can settle at the bottom of the intestines, and they may lead to the such type of chronic type of colic in case of the many animals, including horses. Then intestinal adhesions, you can see some of the pictures of the intestinal adhesions. You can see there is a formation of pus, even pus or the fibrinous tissue. Then abdominal cavity is having the excess of the serous fluid, serosanguinous fluid, and the fibrinous fluid can be accumulated into the abdominal cavity. Then sometimes there is a rupture of intestines. So all these are the operative. These are not postmortem pictures. So all these are the operative pictures. So in operations, I could able to find there was an adhesion of the intestines to the other parts of intestines because of the migratory roundworms. Then rupture of intestines. So there was obstruction, and the portion behind the obstruction, it's get burst because of the excessive accumulation of the ingesta. Then surgical intervention in case of colic is required. Non-surgical intervention in case of colic. So rolling, then abomasal displacement, torsion. So we can use the non-surgical interventions like rolling, abomasal displacement in case of the torsion, as well as the abomasal displacement. Then the surgical interventions. So we may go for the surgical interventions for the volvulus, torsions of the uterus, torsion of the intestines. Then sometimes the cystitis, urolithiasis. So the cystitis and urolithiasis can be diagnosed with the help of laboratory investigation of the urine or the urine sedimentation. We can examine that urine sedimentation, and we can observe the urolithiasis and cystitis. Then hepatitis, we can observe hepatitis with the help of our percussion, then the auscultation, then with the help of laboratory investigation. Then like a serum biochemistry, we can go for the serum biochemistry, and we can say that this is because of the hepatitis. Then traumatic radiculopericarditis. So the typical auscultation and the clinical signs will help us to go for the surgery of the traumatic radiculopericarditis. Then hernial conditions. So most of the times, whenever the strangulated type of hernia is there, unless the strangulation is not there, there are no chance of the any pain. But once there is a initiation of strangulation, you can see this is the same case, and it has been open over here, and you can see the most of the portion of the colon is get herniated into that particular area, and you can see the strangulation and the blood vessels are engorged one, and there is no other option in this condition except the surgery. So I went for surgery and doing the surgery of that particular case. Now volvulus, again the same thing. The volvulus is also non-reducible by the physical agents of the rolling, and everything will not be reduced the volvulus. We should go for the open abdominal surgery. So here you can see the typical cyanosis of the all intestinal parts. So the complete this structure is get twisted, and because of that the open abdominal surgery was carried out. Then uruminotomy. So many uruminotomies we are doing. So it is also another type of conditions, at field conditions that lead to the pain into the animal. So if the such type of metal particles are or the metals are there into the body or the reticulum, definitely there are a lot of pain to the diaphragm, pain to the reticulum, pain to the pericardium, and pain to the peritoneum. So all these things lead to the acute type of pains into the animals. Musculoskeletal system. So here fractures may be simple compound fractures. Then for the correction of fractures, we should go for the fixation, immobilization, then reduction of fractures. Then we may go for the regional anesthesia, nerve block, or sedation. Then dislocation of joints. So again, we have to go for the same type of things. And as a therapy or the follow-up therapy, we are using the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, vitamin E and selenium. Then fluid therapy, especially I am saying vitamin E and selenium and fluid therapy whenever there is a mechanical injury to the muscles, because the catabolic products of the muscles may lodge into the kidneys, and definitely that may lead to the kidney failure later on after 5 to 6 days after the muscle damage. So it's better to give vitamin E, selenium, and fluid therapy to remove the whatever the catabolic products of the muscle tissue injury they are accumulated into the kidneys. So fractures, immobilization. These are the immobilization at the farm level. It's another sort of immobilization. The fracture was here, so the mobilization was there up to this area. In buffaloes, they are having the fracture at this particular portion. Now affection of uterus. After that one, we can see the affection of uterus, the post-prolapse complications. So the pain to the animal may be observed because of the post-prolapse complications. Then the complications after the intrauterine treatment, sometimes it may happen. We are giving intrauterine treatment, and suddenly animal will show the colic, the kicking at the abdomen, and sometimes though there is no any history of the parturition or anything, so though the normal uterus is there or the normal physiological uterus is there, it starts prolapsing because of the intrauterine therapy. So this may happen many times in the field conditions. So we are giving the some 10-20 ml of the ofloxacin or something into the intrauterine, or sometimes we are giving that iodine, povidone iodine, or the Lugol's iodine in diluted form. We are inserting into the uterus. In that conditions also, there are chances of the acute pain because of that, and animals start colic. Then the prolapse may be observed. Then after that, after handling the prolapse cases or the handling of the dystocia, there are chances of the septic metritis. So generally, the uterus, the horn of uterus will go at the deeper portion of the abdomen, and there is no, because of the malhandling or the excessive handling, the internal structure or the internal debris of the uterus will not be removed from the lumen of uterus. So they may lead to the septic type of metritis. Then In such conditions, we have to go for the antispasmodic drugs and sedations. So whenever this type of conditions, like when you are giving the intrauterine to the normal physiological animal having the some problem of the repeat bleeding or the uterine discharge is not clear, in such conditions we are giving the some ofloxacin or nidazole or such type of medications. In such conditions, there are chances of the prolapse, then chances of colic. So in such condition, we may go for the antispasmodic and the sedations. Then sometimes we have to go antibiotics for the septic type of metritis. So here again the case of prolapse, the metritis, case of metritis, typical parturition. So the handling of the uterus may lead to the septic type of metritis. Now after that, actually we can see the how to pain is developed in the body and how to we have to choose different kind of anti-inflammatory drugs or the either anti-inflammatory drugs or steroids. Now any inflammation will start with the cell membrane, and the cell membrane is having the phospholipids. Now with the help of or the with the any stimulus, there is a activation of phospholipase A2. So then there is a development of the arachidonic acid pathways. So arachidonic acid pathways is again having the two pathways. So one is a cyclooxygenase pathways, lipoxygenase pathways. So cyclic endoperoxidase are developed, then the lipoxygenase are developed. So during that, the cyclooxygenase can produce the prostacyclin that lead to the, once the prostacyclins are produced, that lead to the antiplatelet aggregations and vasodilatation. So in case of inflammation, we are observing the there is aggregation or the no aggregation. So both the things can be observed together. Then vasodilatation is commonly observed in any kind of acute inflammation. So that is because of the prostacyclin. After release of prostacyclin, the prostaglandins are produced. The prostaglandins, the role of prostaglandin is to produce edema, pain, fever, and vasodilatation. So that is a part of the cyclic endoperoxidase, or the it's part of arachidonic acid pathway. So the prostaglandins are released that lead to the edema, pain, fever, vasodilation. Then the another chemicals that can be produced during the inflammation, that is the thromboxynase. So thromboxynase will lead to the platelet aggregation and vasoconstriction. So if you see these three, they are having their its own activity, and that lead to the potentiate the inflammatory reaction. Then lipoxygenase pathways will lead to the release of large number of leukotrienes. So interleukins, n numbers of leukotrienes can be released during the acute inflammatory reaction into the particular tissue or particular parts of body. So here I am giving example of the steroid. If we are giving steroid, they will act or they will stop the inflammatory process over here only. So the cell membrane, they will not allow to activate the phospholipase A2. So these steroids will act over here. So the further cycle of inflammation will be stopped with the help of steroids. But steroids are having its own limitations and owns its own adverse effects. So we are not using steroids regularly as we are using the non-steroids. So the steroids are having the limitations. So we can use the steroids for the single times, but the other type of or the other inflammatory procedures can be controlled by the using of the non-steroidal or the NSAID. So NSAID will act over the cyclooxygenase. So the cyclooxygenase will include the COX-1 and COX-2. So the NSAID will stop or the inflammation at this place. So the NSAID will work over here, but the steroids will work over here. Though the steroids are having these kind of things, but the limited use of steroids is essential for our routine practice because it having the much more adverse effect along with the its beneficial effects too. Now NSAIDs, now many times beyond steroids we are using the NSAIDs, and many times we are confused which type of NSAID should be used and how to use. So many NSAIDs can be used for the relief of the pain. So some are potent, some are short acting, some are long acting, some are, or the most of them are the toxic to the liver and kidneys. So most of the NSAIDs are toxic to the liver and kidneys. Then the NSAIDs are the gastrointestinal ulcerogenics. So most of the NSAID can cause the ulceration into the GI tract. Now here I am giving some of the adverse effect of the NSAID. The NSAID can cause the affects the gastrointestinal tract by the gastroesophageal reflex, erosions, peptic ulcers, or abomasal ulcer we can say. Then gastrointestinal hemorrhages, small and large bowel ulcerations. So the small intestines and large intestines will show sometimes ulceration because of the long-standing use of the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Then hematopoietic system is also affected. There some NSAIDs like aspirin, analgin can suppress the blood clotting mechanism, so impair platelet activity and blood diacheresis and bone marrow diacheresis. Then the renal dysfunction can be observed by the most of the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, and definitely the long-standing use of the NSAID is definitely lead to the acute kidney failure, and sometimes it's a chronic renal failure if we are using the large or the further large periods. So say for example, I am giving example of the human being itself. So if you are suffering, if you yourself you are suffering from the some arthritis, if you are taking some tablets for a longer period, definitely there are chances of the development of the tubular nephritis and the tubular necrosis of the kidney, and may lead to the kidney failure cases. So be aware of that. Also, the same rules are applicable for the human beings as well as the animals also. Then other problems or the other adverse effect of the NSAID drugs. So hepatotoxicity, aseptic meningitis, then the CNS depression and diarrhea sometimes can be observed because of the use of the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Now here we can start some of the drugs and its doses, and what are the different dose rates can be observed. So ketoprofen can be used. It can be used in the respiratory type respiratory infections. So wherever this ketoprofen is not able to depress their nervous system, so other non-steroidal anti-inflammatories may lead to the depression of the respiratory system, but the ketoprofen is not able to depress the respiratory system. In cattle and buffaloes, we can go for the 3 milligram per kg body weight of the ketoprofen. Withdrawal period for the milk is nil, and for meat for the 4 days in case of the IM route, and if we are using by IV route, it will be 1 day. Then flunixin meglumine. Flunixin meglumine is one of the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, and having the cyclooxygenase inhibitor. So as we had discussed earlier, where it gets stopped or where it stop the inflammatory process. So it stop the process at the cyclooxygenase, and it's potent analgesic, antipyretic, and anti-inflammatory. So the dose rate in cattle is 2.2 milligram per kg body weight. Withdrawal time it's 5 days in the meat and 1 day in the milk. Then tolfenamic acid. So tolfenamic acid can be used as an anti-inflammatory drugs, then which belongs to the fumarate group, fumarate groups, and it is a potent inhibitor of the cyclooxygenase. So all NSAIDs having the cyclooxygenase, so they are all acts on the cyclooxygenase, then carboxygenase B2, and they can be given by IV route or intramuscular route by 1 ml per 20 kg. The meat withdrawal period is 12 days, and then milk is nil. Then aspirin. So aspirin can be given whenever there is a requirement, whenever there is an aggregation of platelets are more. In such conditions, we can give the aspirin. So by oral route, we can give aspirin 10 mg per kg body weight twice a day orally. Meat and milk 1 day is a withdrawal period. Phenylbutazone, it's a drug of choice in the horses specifically. So most of the horse practitioners, they are using the phenylbutazone in case of the horses for the multiple type of pain and inflammatory conditions. So commonly used in the musculoskeletal pain and the inflammation, arthritis, soft tissue injury, muscle soreness, bone joint problems, and laminitis. So dose is 4.4 to 8.8 milligram per kg body weight orally, 2.2 to 4.4 milligram per kg body weight, and can be given by the IV route. Milk and meat, it's a 15 days withdrawal period if we are using in a cattle. Meloxicam is another type of anti-inflammatory drugs, can be used having the cyclooxygenase pathway, or having the effects over the cyclooxygenase pathway, and its dose is 0.5 to 0.6 milligram per kg body weight. Withdrawal period is 2 to 3 days in milk. milk and meat. Then dicyclomine is specially used in case of the GI tract infections or the GI tract spasm. Then whenever there is a tubular organs, so every tubular organ is having or lined by the smooth muscle. So this dicyclomine is basically acting on the smooth muscles of the any tract, maybe GI tract, maybe the uterus, maybe the ureter, maybe the urethra. So in all these conditions, dicyclomine will play important role. The dose is of 0.5 milligram per kg body weight intramuscularly. Along with that, dicyclomine, as we had discussed one case, whenever we are giving some intrauterine and if the animal is showing colic, so in such conditions, we can go for the dicyclomine as well as the atropine sulfates together. So it will give some beneficial result to us. Then after steroids, after non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, we can see the steroids. So steroids having its very good effects in the control of the all inflammations, inflammations. Then it can stops the many immunological mediated inflammatory reaction into the body. But the use of this for a longer period definitely having its problem with the immune system of the body. So many steroids can be used for the a very short period and with the very good results. So prednisolone, isoflurperidone, then betamethasone, dexamethasone, triamcinolone. So all these are having the very good effects in the veterinary practice. Now, one of the good products has been designed by the Roots Biotech. A combination of nimesulide and paracetamol with the ceratopeptidase, vitamin E and selenium. Now, the vitamin E, selenium, then the ceratopeptidase, nimesulide and paracetamol. So basically, as a other inflammatory NSAID, the nimesulide is also having the COX-2 inhibitor. Then inflammation, it's stopped. Then it's an effective in anti-inflammatory and analgesic. It is generally free of significant gastrointestinal side effects. So the nimesulide generally not produce the peptic ulcer, we can say the ulceration in abomasum or ulceration in the GI tract. Then it can be used successfully for the as a follow-up therapy for the mastitis, acute and chronic. Then pain and fever, all types of pain and fever, you can use that as a follow-up therapy for the lameness and by the muscular skeletal disorders. Then post-operative cares, and the dose is a 3 to 5 milligram per kg body weight, and withdrawal period is about 7 days. Then the vitamin E and selenium, which has been given along with this product, is the important aspect of the inflammation. That is, it can prevent the ROS production, edema relieving, and antioxidant. So whatever the reactive oxygen species are produced during the inflammation, they will be taken care by the vitamin E is given with this bolus, and it will act as a antioxidant, and the ceratopeptidase which has been given with this, it will relieve the edema. So it's a combination of the all thing. The vitamin E enriched with the selenium and vitamin E. The name is NP Sera Plus, the analgesic, antipyretic, anti-inflammatory bolus, and can be given in a better for the better relieving pain and inflammation, specifically chronic and acute and chronic one. Now, if we give the these two combination together, I will recommend, or the clinical trials has been carried out with the fibrosis of the udder, the arthritis. So the combination of these two, the NP Sera bolus for 3 days, followed by 5 to 10 days of the Roo Care bolus. So one bolus twice a day. It produces very excellent result in the fibrosis of the udder, then the arthritis or the chronic arthritis. So the combination of these two things will be helpful for you. So if you want to give for a longer period, then we should go give for the oral, intravenous salines, as well as we should give some liver tonics along with this NP Sera bolus to avoid the complication of the liver. Then NP Sera Plus bolus. So already everything has been given over here. Okay, so this is about all these things that I want to share with you. So if you want to contact the roots, here the details are given. The phone numbers are here. rootsbiotech@yahoo.com, roots info@rootsbiotech.com, and www.rootsbiotech.com. And here my number is there. The things which may not I answer over here, I may answer to you with this WhatsApp number, or you can email me on this number or this email ID. So thank you very much. I will go through the different your questions. I will try to give answers to most of the questions of you people. Okay, how much metronidazole can be given in mastitis cases, or the cases which are having the gangrenous type of mastitis? So here, at least 1 liter of metronidazole can be given intravenously, and about 100 to 50 ml to 100 ml of the metronidazole can be infused intramammary into the gangrenous type of mastitis. 1 liter IV and 50 to 100 ml is to be infused into the intramammary. Dose of potassium iodide orally, you can go for the 2 to 4 gram of the potassium iodide orally. But in case of roux care, the potassium iodide is already there. Roux care bolus potassium iodide is there. Along with the potassium iodide, there is a presence of other herbs which can potentiate the activity of the potassium iodide. So you can use the 1 bolus or twice a day. Otherwise, if you are not getting bolus, you can start the potassium iodide orally, 4 gram per day for at least 14 days. So it will be useful. Along with the not only the potassium iodide, you should go for the hot fermentation, then the liniment application. So whatever the things are possible to you, you can make a combination of that and try to relieve the pain of the animal or the chronic pain of the animal. Okay, the dose. Yes, NP syrup bullets are useful in acute mastitis and chronic mastitis also, in both the cases. Okay, NP syrup bullets directly is not responsible for the prevention of the lysis of RBC. So ultimately the inflammation which is there, if the immune mediated hemolytic anemia or the any anemia which is caused by the immune system activation, in such conditions you can give the better choice, you can go for the steroids. And as fever is there, for the fever you can give the non-steroids. So directly it is not responsible for the reduction in the destruction of RBC, or it will not prevent the lysis of RBC or lysis of WBC also. Yes, we can use the surgical Rumec DP after surgery, so it will prevent both the things. Okay, analgesic and the NPCRI is having the both the action, analgesic as well as antipyretic, because paracetamol is also there. So both the things can happen together. Okay, nothing will happen. So the clinical trials has been taken out. Nothing is happened by leaking of the Rumec DP. Though we are using in the dog also. The dog is also having the very good effects, but there is no effect of the leaking of Rumec DP in the animals. Okay, ceratopeptidases. So ceratopeptidases are the local anti-inflammatory drugs. They can reduce the edema, because in case of acute inflammatory conditions, there is a exudation of plasma, exudation of fluid into the surrounding tissues. So the ceratopeptidases try to remove that inflammatory exudate from the particular area. So the ceratopeptidases will act in that manner, as well as the energy. Not energy, but it will be helpful for the relief of the pain or the relief of the edematous fluid into the particular affected area. Yes, we can use NP Sera bolus in any kind of infection inflammation. So uterine infections. So orally we have to give orally we have to give the NP Sera bolus along with the local application or the intrauterine application of the some antibiotics, and so antibiotics will take care of the infections and the NP Sera will take care of the inflammation. Okay, whatever the email ID you have been given over here, the admin can send all these links to all of you with the whenever they get time, the along with this PowerPoint, as well as you can just take around of the Roots Biotech the YouTube channel. So you will get all these recordings are also available over there. So in case of fracture, it's choice and availability. So any kind of NSID, because all NSID will act on the same place. So there is no any difference in that. So cyclooxygenase pathways has been controlled by the all of this type of anti-inflammatories, though you can use the nimesulide paracetamol if you are using the flunitrazine, meglumine if you are using the meloxicam. So all will collectively act on the same part or the same cascade of the inflammation. So it's your choice. You can use any analgesics, but the basic thing is that we should once the fracture is there, we should go for the correction of fracture. If the pain are much more into the particular area, you can go for the local analgesia, or you can go for a nerve block. So if you give nerve block, that there is a temporary relief of the pain. Meanwhile, you can go for the other preparations of the surgery, maybe the bone pinning or other things. So generally the bone pinning is generally carried out in the general anesthesia. But if you are not, if it is not possible at the field level, you can go for the regional anesthesia under the sedation and go for these surgical corrections, or maybe the mobilization with the plasters. Okay, atropine basically it's a mimetic. So whatever the motility activity of the smooth muscles are there, it will be stopped by the atropine sulfate. So if we are giving the atropine sulfate, the spasmodic activity will be stopped. If you remember, in our few years back, we are getting small tablets. So the name is the Lomofen or Lomotil was there. So and it is designed for the abdominal pain and diarrhea in case of the human beings. So very small yellow color tablets are there. We are taking 2 tablets at a time. So after taking 2 tablets, generally we are suffering from the constipation next day. It's because of the same thing. All the spasmodic activity is get stopped by the atropine sulfate. So the atropine sulfate is the very good anti-spasmodic type of drugs and can be used in the whenever there is a colic. Especially, I described one case that is generally when you are doing intrauterine mal handling. So whenever there is a spasm or whenever there is a colic, also we can give the atropine sulfate. Okay, the same answer will be there, fracture. Yes, for the steroids, we should go for the tapering dose. If you are giving suddenly change into the steroids, means today 10 ml and second day no steroids, or if you want to reduce, or if you want to give the full treatment, you have to go for the tapering dose. The 10, 8, 7, 6 like that, slowly, you have to reduce the doses of the steroids whenever it is necessary. Yes, at some of the conditions we have to use the steroids and non-steroids together. There is no issue, but the limited use of steroids should be there. So it should not be addict for that animal. So sometimes it may happen that the after giving some injections, then animals start feeding, or such things may happen. So don't allow addiction to the animals also. So to relieve the acute pain, we can give the non-steroidal and steroidal. Though the steroids can act one step before the non-steroidal, but the other effects like steroids can interfere with the metabolism of the tissue, especially the glucose metabolism of tissue. So the more energy will be transferred towards the tissue areas, then the fluids can be removed with the help of steroids, and ultimately the large number of inflammatory cells or the leukocytes can be drawn towards the site of inflammation. Then the both the things can be used together, and it will have very good effects. But the steroids should not be used for the larger or a longer period. That generally we are using like an NSAID. So NSAID we are using for 5 to 10 days. So we should not use steroids for that much of periods. Otherwise, animal will be completely out of lactation. So animal will not show any lactation, or the complete galaxia may be observed because of the steroids. For fracture, generally you can prefer the long-acting type of NSAIDs. So, and along with the H2 blockers generally. So if we are using in case of fracture, so till there is what we say, the callus formation, then as there is a absence of inflammation or pain, little bit pain should be there for 2 months, but once the animal start bearing its little bit weight, then we can stop the NSAID drugs. But along with that, it's better to give it is better to give the H2 blockers to minimize the peptic ulcers, or minimize the abomasal ulcers in case of the animals. Is it safe in pregnancy? Yes. Till no any adverse effect was observed up till now in pregnancy. Yes, the same answer. Rouquer bolus can be given for 5 to 10 days, or till there is a subside of the clinical signs. Yes, you can use you can replace EKRC and N-Pichara bolus. But along with that, if you use the Rouquer also, it will increase your efficacy of the treatment. Yes, many times it is happened by giving the amoxicillin, the microflora of the rumen is get damaged, or the microflora of rumen is completely get we can say died because of the amoxicillin. So most of the times you people might have realized that by giving the amoxicillin bolus also orally, there are chances of the become animal off feed. It may become the toxic, and ultimately sometimes deaths are there because the complete cessation of the ruminal motility, then the formation of some methanes, carbon dioxides, and the other gas are produced, the acidosis can be developed, and so animals may die because of the excessive toxin developments. So it's better whenever any antibiotics are there, has to use specifically the amoxicillin group. We should give a large amount of the live culture and the probiotics, prebiotics together along with the amoxicillin. And if such things are there, you can use the fluid therapy also. And I don't know how much the ketoprofen dose you use, but as you are saying, for 3 days you are use the ketoprofen, but there are possibility of the this joint pain because of the some lameness and ruminal acidosis, and the amoxicillin has exaggerate the effect of the ruminal acidosis, and the toxemia might have developed. But if you have done the postmortem, most of the things might have come out. Okay, how to decide which NSAID can be used in different cases in field conditions. So generally I have given everything over here. So basically all non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, they are basically acts on the cycloogenase pathway. So we can use the any anti-inflammatory drugs which can be available with you. But whenever there is a spasmodic type of things are there, we can use some specific like a dicyclomine. Whenever there is a pain and inflammation, then edema formation is there, you can use the any other injections along with the follow-up therapy by the NP bolus. So like that, you can alter your treatment accordingly as per the availability, whatever the present at your places. I don't know. Okay, for mycoplasmal treatment, you can go for the means first we must identify the mycoplasma. But for mycoplasmal treatment, we can go for the moxifloxacin, then the combination of enrofloxacin or the cifoparazone tazobactam, cifoparazone sulbactam we can use for the mycoplasma type of therapy. We have some special issue for the or special webinar on the mastitis. So I will cover all these mastitis type of things in our next webinar. So I will skip the questions of the mastitis over here. Okay. Okay, for mycoplasmal treatment, I will repeat this all type of mastitis in our next webinar on next Friday. And along with the different color of milk and how to use the antibiotics, I will show direct demo to you people. Can we use Rumec-Dp for wounds near eye? So near eye, we should not use the Rumec-Dp near to the eye, but you can use Rumec-Dp near the vulval openings, or whenever there is a maggoted wounds or the wounds near the vulva, you can use over there, but not in the eyes. Okay, which is the best drug to use in equine colic? So basically, we must find out which type of colic is there in equines, because as we discussed, the gas colic is there, the displacement colic is there, then the foreign body colic is there, means the crystal colic is there, then the obstruction type of colic is there. So basically, you can use the fluid therapy, antibiotics, then the use of the flunitrazine, meglumine, then the phenylbutazone. So these two drugs can be used for the treating the equine colic cases. In case of uterine inflammation, which NSAID is better? So any NSAID is better because as we discussed, it acts at the one place, anywhere, in any inflammation, any infections. Okay, low grade mastitis, we will discuss all these mastitis things in our next webinar. Opiates can be used as a painkiller. Yes, we can use the opiates whenever it is possible. We can use that. Okay, it is said that the meloxicam and the steroids or dexamethasone should not be given together. It's depending upon your requirement. If the extensive edema is there, it's better to use the dexamethasone along with the meloxicam or any other what we say, the NSAID drugs. But do not mix both together. So together in the sense, so we should not mix this together. We can use separately because it's having its own function. It's having its own function, but both the functions will have the effects on the inflammation. But along with this, if the edema is there and if you want to use diuretics, we should not mix all these three things together. So we should not give dexamethasone, we should not give the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, and we should not use the diuretics together. So ultimately they will lead to the acute kidney dysfunction, and the complications will be more and more instead of the recovery of the animal. Okay, streptopenicillin, sulfametazine, then hydrocortisone, intramammary preparation, really effective theoretically. Streptopenicillin may not be effective in bacterial multiplication. It can reduced by the sulfametazine. Okay, for this question, we'll discuss this thing in our next webinar. Okay, the pain in how to diagnose pain due to the abscess in liver, abscess in the liver. So from okay, if sonography is not available, so it's quite difficult to understand the abscess, special abscess. We can say you can say the hepatitis is there, but we should not able to diagnose the abscess just by looking towards the animals or by just palpation method. So either you can go for the exploratory laparotomy if you don't have the ultrasonography, then you can go for the laparotomy and directly you can visualize the organ. Yes, I have given answer of the opioids. Okay, NSID in prolapse case, you can use the pneumocellulose paracetamol, no problem. You can use the flunixin, meglumine, you can use the meloxicam, there is no problem. You can use anything. Okay, thank you very much. So the remaining questions which are related to the mastitis, we can take these questions in our next session.
Thank you, sir, for such a wonderful seminar.
Thank you very much.
It was very informative, and I hope everyone enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. We will meet you next time. We appreciate you being here, and we will meet you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.